Grace and peace. Thanks for joining us today. I am your host, Apostle Cheryl L. Richardson, and we welcome you to Judah's Roar Domestic Violence Awareness Initiative YouTube channel. Today's topic will be the 5 keys to surviving a narcissist. The 5 keys to surviving a narcissist. We're going to discuss and define what a narcissist is, as well as what gaslighting is. And we're also going to talk about cognitive dissonance. I'm going to give you a few minutes to check down here. Click that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Make sure you tap that bell so that you can schedule your notifications. And I'm going to give you a few seconds to do that, and then we'll be right back. And we're back. Thank you for taking the time to subscribe. It is greatly appreciated. It will help us to continue to raise awareness about this global pandemic that we know is domestic violence. Now, we're going to be talking about the 5 keys, as I stated previously, to surviving a narcissist. And so let's talk about what a narcissist is. Okay, this is our first point. Point number 1. A narcissist is a person who has an excessive interest in or admiration of him or herself. They are overly self-involved, they are vain, and they are selfish. Okay? So a narcissist is someone who is excessively impressed with themselves. They love themselves. Okay? They are the center of their universe. And as far as they are concerned, they should be the center of your universe as well. Now, let's look at gaslighting. There are many different definitions out there, but this one I think is very compelling. Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation in which a person or a group covertly sows seeds of doubt in a targeted individual or a group, making them question their own, number 1, memory, number 2, perception, or number 3, judgment, often invoking in them the third thing that we're going to talk about today, which is cognitive dissonance. What is cognitive dissonance? Cognitive dissonance is described as mental stress or discomfort, which is experienced by an individual who holds 2 or more contradictory beliefs, ideas, or values at the same time. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about the person who is an abuser and who plays psychological mind games and involves himself in emotional abuse. And this is even in the absence of actual physical abuse. It's important to understand that abuse begins long before it becomes physical. Okay, and we've talked about that in previous broadcasts. And so keeping that in mind, the narcissist is the person who is the center of the universe as far as they are concerned, and they should be the center of everyone else's universe. And the only purpose that you have in life is to meet their every need, which is virtually impossible to do because they have this insatiable ego and this need for attention and this need for adoration. Okay. Now, the word narcissist actually, when you think about it, it comes from this story in Greek mythology where Narcissus was out walking one day and beheld his reflection in this pond and fell in love with himself. And when he realized that his love would be unrequited, that there was no way for him to receive that love back, right? He killed himself. So there you go. That's how intense and unhealthy this mindset is, okay? And so what are we talking about today? We are talking about the 5 keys to surviving a narcissist, because if you are involved with a narcissist, and we're talking about intimate partners today, but this could be a parent, it could be a sibling. You surviving is what you have to do if you're interacting with them, all right? And so we're going to look at that. We're going to look at the narcissist. We've already defined what a narcissist is. Okay. Their weapon of choice is gaslighting. All right. And we're going to talk about what that looks like. And then we're going to talk about cognitive dissonance, which is the outcome. It's what you can expect if you continue to engage with a narcissist. So, what does it feel like? You might be wondering. You may be wondering if this is something that you are experiencing right now in your own life. And so, let's look at this. Cognitive dissonance, we've talked about, it's mental stress or discomfort, right? And it's usually experienced as a psychological stress when we participate in an action that goes against one or more of our core values, something that we have always believed is right, something that we have help to govern our lives with, right? Whether that is being respectful to others, whether that is being caring and nurturing and open, whatever our core values are, we experience oftentimes cognitive dissonance when we're put in a position where the requirement is that we violate what we believe to be right, what we believe to be just. Okay. And so if you're dealing with a narcissist, then they will push you into a situation where you're constantly battling within yourself, and quite naturally this can have an effect even on you physiologically. It can affect your health. You can develop insomnia. There are all kinds of things. It can impact your appetite because there's this ongoing distress. And now remember, we talked about the fact that the demands of a narcissist are never ending, right? They go on into perpetuity. They just go on and on and on, and they're never satisfied. And no matter what you do, it's not good enough. No matter what you do, they can demand that you do 25 things. If you get 24 of them done, you have utterly and completely failed. Okay. And so that's what it feels like. So the result is that when two actions or ideas are not consistent psychologically with one another, then if you continue to interact with this narcissist, what is required is that you do everything in your power to change and to adjust and to adapt to the demands until they become more consistent. Now, what does that sound like? Trauma bonding. What does that sound like? Stockholm syndrome, right? And so what happens is usually you start shrinking and shrinking and shrinking the importance of your own values. The importance of your own values. You've got to try to get them more closely aligned with one another, all right, in order to even continue to participate in this relationship, which I'm using the term relationship incredibly loosely because the word relationship kind of infers interaction. And when you're involved with a narcissist, your needs, your desires, your core values, your discomfort, your mental distress is of no consequence to them. So, we've talked about previously how gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation, right? In which the abuser seeks to negatively impact a group of people or an individual's ability to trust their own memory, their own perception, their own judgment. What does that mean? When we're talking about impacting memory, it might look something like this. Say the abuser promises that on your anniversary, you can go out to your favorite restaurant for dinner. And then as that day approaches, you're really excited and you're looking forward to it. Maybe the relationship is on the uptick, right? Maybe things are getting better. And maybe your wants and needs and desires are important. And so you're excited because in the past, they've never been willing to take you to this particular place. But as that day approaches, you say to the abuser, I'm so excited about our date and the fact that we're going to go to this restaurant that I've been wanting to go to for a very long time. And they turn and look at you and they say, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And then you say, well, I'm excited because remember, you said that we could go to this restaurant. And they look at you and say, with all sincerity, I never said that. You know how I feel about going out to eat. Okay. Okay. So that's an example of how they may try to impact your memory. And if this happens enough, you begin to question if you misunderstood, you begin to question your own sanity over a period of time. Now, what does this look like if we're talking about perception? We're talking about perception. It could be, let's say you're a parent and you have a small child, and the child puts attempts to put something into a light socket, right? And I mean, a lot of times kids will attempt this if you don't have those protective um, plugs plugged into the outlet. And so let's just say you and the abuser are sitting there, and your child, who's a toddler, is playing in the same room. And then they go to stick something into the outlet, okay? And you jump up to prevent them from doing so. And the abuser accuses you of being harsh with the child and impeding their ability to learn and explore their environment. So their perception is that because you intervened, you were interfering with something. And your perception is you were deliberately trying to interfere with a possible electrocution because your baby was trying to stick something in the outlet. So you two can witness the same event and they will assume an opposing position. And this is designed to cause you to question your ability to discern what is going on in the world around you. Okay, so we've talked about how the gaslighting that the abuser, the narcissist employs impacts the memory, perception, and the judgment of the target, right? And what it does is it can evoke or cause cognitive dissonance and low self esteem. And we've talked about the fact that cognitive dissonance is when you have this tremendous conflict between what the narcissist is demanding from you and what the relationship requires of you and your own core values and your sense of right and wrong and your sense of justice and injustice. Okay. Let's look at what the weapons of choice are so that you know what you're looking for if you're in a relationship where you feel in turmoil emotionally all of the time. Okay. So a narcissist's weapons of choice are denial, denying that anything happened at all, denying what you've seen with your own eyes, misdirection, sending you off on a wild goose chase deliberately. Um, Another thing that they like to do is contradiction, which is where you make a statement, they contradict it, they contradict what you remember, they contradict what you recall, they put words in your mouth. They presume to tell you what you meant by a thing, as opposed to asking you what you meant by a statement or by an action. Okay. Misinformation, blatantly lying, and sometimes not directly lying, but allowing you to assume what any rational person would assume regarding whatever situation you all are talking about, knowing full well that the path that you're going down is not the accurate path. So, not providing feedback to correct your perception at all, but allowing you to assume certain things. Now, what's an example of misinformation? Well, maybe the narcissist told you, I've got to work late. We're working on this project, and so I won't be getting home until a little after midnight. And you say, okay, it's work related, right? No problem. And this goes on for months and months and months. But they don't tell you that the project, if it even existed, okay, that the project ended 2 months ago. Now they're staying out past midnight and they're allowing you to believe the last thing that they said to you. What is important about that? They never came back to update you, right? So misinformation is a huge tool, all right? And these tactics that they use involves an attempt to destabilize the victim or victims, um, and to diminish the importance of what the victim believes and making what you believe as a victim, making the victim's beliefs illegitimate, not valid, not important. Okay. So The whole point of gaslighting, which involves all of these tactics that I just discussed and described to you, is honestly just to make the target feel a little crazy and to not trust their judgment and their perception and their memory. Okay. And this is the cruelest thing that you can do to an individual. Understand this, that this can happen in the absence of physical aggression altogether. It's not necessary for a narcissist or for a abuser to be physically aggressive when they're employing these tactics. It is destructive as physical aggression. And as a matter of fact, it's been established that victims of emotional abuse and psychological abuse are more prone to PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder, than those who experience physical abuse. Okay, so now let's talk about those 5 keys. These are things that I've learned from my own experience, things that help me to hang on to a sense of reality and hang on to my core values despite being in a horrific situation, despite what I observed in childhood, despite what I experienced as a young adult. Okay. So the first thing that I would say to you is remain defiant. Remain defiant. Stand your ground. Now, wisdom would dictate that you not always do this verbally. This needs to be primarily an internal thing. Why do I say that? Because arguing, debating with a narcissist is pointless. It's the equivalent of shoving your head into a meat grinder. Okay, nothing good is going to come out of it. And so remain defiant internally. Internally, hold on to your core values. Internally, in your internal dialogue, when they're accusing you of something that you know you have not done, you can say to yourself internally, I didn't do that. I'm not guilty of that. Okay? So, an attitude of, I know who I am and I know what my values are, and I know that these values have served me well in my life, and I'm not going to abandon my core values. Okay? That would be the first key. Survival key number 2. Understand. This might be a challenge, but understand that the narcissist will never accept accountability. Absolutely never accept responsibility for being unreasonable. Okay. And so, key number 2 is acknowledging that. And when you acknowledge that and when you understand that, then you adjust your expectation so that your expectation is reasonable. You'll hear me say this often in our videos. So, when we're talking about a reasonable expectation, we're not talking about an expectation that you or I have a right to have, an expectation that we have a right to entertain, an expectation that we have a right to embrace, right? Because of the agreements made when the relationship was established. Okay, we're not talking about that. That's not what we're talking about. Okay, so what we're talking about is when we say reasonable, where's the evidence to support that expecting this person to accept responsibility for their behavior and their actions and their words or lack of action, right? Where's the evidence to support that they're even capable of doing so? Okay. And not only capable, but willing to do. So they have to be able and they have to be willing to accept responsibility. Where is the evidence in your relationship to this point that they are able to do that? When you observe their life and their interactions with others, do they demonstrate an ability and a willingness to accept responsibility for their actions, inactions, and behaviors and words? Or is it always someone else's fault, someone else's misunderstanding, right? So, number 1, remain defiant internally. You don't have to verbalize that outwardly, okay? But you hold on to that internally. Number two, make sure that your expectation is reasonable and that you're able to accept that the narcissist is incapable and disinterested in accepting responsibility or being held accountable for their actions, words, or lack of action. Survival key number three, make a decision to release the wish, the pipe dream, the fairy tale for things to be different. Okay? The narcissist is incapable and disinterested. Okay? So focus on maintaining your grip on reality, on what's real and what your core values are. Okay? So if you notice, these keys kind of build on one another. Key number one was to remain defiant internally, right? And then key number two was accepting that the narcissist will not accept responsibility, will not be held accountable. All right. And to be honest with yourself about how reasonable it is for you to expect this particular person, okay, this particular person to accept responsibility or accountability. When in the past have you seen them do it? Are they able and willing? If they are treating you poorly and you're not able to talk to them about these things, then the answer to that is no. Okay, they are not willing and they are incapable. All right. And then key number three is to release the wish for things to be different. Okay, give up the fairy tale, give up the pipe dream. And if you're going to stay, understand that this is what you're staying in, and it will get worse and worse over time. If physical abuse has not occurred, there's a likelihood that it will down the road, okay? And so, survival key number four, this is going to be really hard. This may be the most difficult one. Survival key number four is to stop engaging. Let them think that they're winning. They like to fight. They like to fight. They like to identify your weak spot, your Achilles heel. Okay. And so understand this. When you engage in a dispute, especially a verbal dispute with someone, if they are astute and skilled at what they're doing, the verbal sparring, the verbal shenanigans, the misdirection, the misinformation, the undermining, okay, the things that we've described previously, then you're arguing with them, you're defending yourself, you're explaining 5 different ways what actually occurred, is revealing your weakness to them, and it's also confirming for them that they have got you exactly where they want you, because you are assigning so much value to having their approval and their acceptance. And they are committed to withholding that from you. So the more you argue and the more that you debate, the more intelligence. Okay, I'm a military veteran, and intelligence is information that you can gain about your opponent, about your adversary, that will help you to understand where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are, how you can exploit those things and turn it to your advantage. So the more you argue, the more you explain, the more you beg, the more you plead, the more you cry, the more intelligence you provide your abuser. Survival key number three, make a decision to release the wish, the pipe dream, the fairy tale for things to be different. Okay? The narcissist is incapable and disinterested. Okay? So focus on maintaining your grip on reality, on what's real and what your core values are. Okay? So if you notice, these keys kind of build on one another. Key number one was to remain defiant internally, right? And then key number two was accepting that the narcissist will not accept responsibility, will not be held accountable. All right. And to be honest with yourself about how reasonable it is for you to expect this particular person, okay, this particular person to accept responsibility or accountability. When in the past have you seen them do it? Are they able and willing? If they are treating you poorly and you're not able to talk to them about these things, then the answer to that is no. Okay, they're not willing and they are incapable. All right. And then key number 3 is to release the wish for things to be different. Okay, give up the fairy tale, give up the pipe dream. And if you're going to stay, understand that this is what you're staying in, and it will get worse and worse over time. If physical abuse has not occurred, there's a likelihood that it will down the road. Okay. And so, survival key number 4, this is going to be really hard. This may be the most difficult one. Survival key number 4 is to stop engaging. Let them think that they're winning. They like to fight. They like to fight. They like to identify your weak spot, your Achilles heel. Okay. And so understand this. When you engage in a dispute, especially a verbal dispute with someone, if they are astute and skilled at what they're doing, the verbal sparring, the verbal shenanigans, the misdirection, the misinformation, the undermining, okay, the things that we've described previously, then you're arguing with them, you're defending yourself, you're explaining 5 different ways what actually occurred, is revealing your weakness to them, and it's also confirming for them that they have got you exactly where they want you, because you are assigning so much value to having their approval and their acceptance. And they are committed to withholding that from you. So the more you argue and the more that you debate, the more intelligence. Okay, I'm a military veteran, and intelligence is information that you can gain about your opponent, about your adversary, that will help you to understand where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are, how you can exploit those things and turn it to your advantage. So the more you argue, the more you explain, the more you beg, the more you plead, the more you cry, the more intelligence you provide your abuser. Survival key number 5. Document the shenanigans. Document it. Document it somehow. In private notes in your phone, in a hidden folder on your computer, in an actual journal. So this is something that I use that helped me to know that I wasn't crazy. Okay, so I'm going to share this with you. Now, when I say document, I don't mean journal in the sense of, today, he or she came home and they were in a bad mood, and then I felt this way and I felt that way. I'm not so much wanting you to focus on your feelings, although your feelings are important. Okay? Your feelings are important, but your feelings when you're dealing with a narcissist will be weaponized against you. Okay? Your feelings, your cares, your desires, your wants, your needs will be weaponized against you. Okay. So when I'm talking about documentation, I mean stick to the facts. Stick to the facts. It's the only thing that will anchor you when you're dealing with a narcissist are the facts. Okay. And not because you need them to confirm or agree with the facts, because remember now, one of the things that they do that causes cognitive dissonance is to oppose whatever you have perceived, right? So when I say stick to the facts, I mean this. He or she arrived home at 5 p.m. Dinner normally is at 5:30. Dinner was at 5:45 tonight because I got started late. They threw a plate across the room because they were angry that dinner didn't start. Fact, a plate was thrown across the room. Fact, I later cleaned up the broken glass from the plate. Fact, he or she then stormed out of the house at 7 p.m. Fact, they did not return until 9 p.m. Fact, when they came in, they did not speak to me, they did not acknowledge me. Fact, they decided to sleep in the guest room. Fact. So stick to the facts, not, they came home and I had a really rough day. And so I was late starting dinner and I was feeling a little down because I didn't get that job that I applied for. And then dinner was late. And then we argued and da 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 da. Also, make sure you document exactly what they say to you, the quotes. You are not this. You are not that. You don't do anything right. Write down what they're saying to you. How is this beneficial? Because in those times when you begin to question your own perception, because you will, if you stay in this situation, you have something to refer to remind you concretely of the behaviors, what actually happened, not your interpretation of the behavior. Not, oh, he threw the plate or she threw the plate because they were so hurt and so frustrated. No, 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 no. They threw a plate. That's inappropriate. They threw a plate, the plate broke. I later cleaned up the glass from the broken plate. Okay. Now, this will help you. It certainly helped me. It helped me to know it's like, wait, 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 wait. No, this did happen. These are the things that happen. And this is the evidence to remind myself that this is what I experienced. Okay. Because remember, if they can cause you to question your perception and your judgment and your memory, then they've got you. Then they've got you in a tailspin. Okay. And sooner or later, this cognitive dissonance, this internal conflict that's going on within you all the time, it's going to affect your mental health, your emotional health, and maybe even your physical safety. So let's go over those 5 survival keys. The key number 1, remain defiant, okay? I'm suggesting that you do that internally and not engage in verbal sparring or arguing with a narcissist because that's akin to shoving your head into a meat grinder, okay? You're going to come out of that conversation, that argument, that dispute, confused and frustrated and emotionally wounded. So remain defiant internally. Let it be your secret weapon, okay? Survival key number 2, accept that the abuser will never accept responsibility truly or accept being held accountable. And so ensure that your expectations are reasonable. Remember now, I emphasize that reasonable is not what you have a right to expect, but what you can expect based on this individual's behavior and conduct. Okay. Have they demonstrated a consistent willingness to be held accountable? Have they accepted an ability to even go there in their thought process? Okay. If not, your expectation that it's going to change is completely unreasonable and it keeps you in the position of a victim. Survival key number 3, release the magical thinking, get rid of it. Get rid of the magical thinking, okay? Just lose it. Lose the magical thinking, the fairy tale, okay? And focus again on survival key number 2, which was making sure that your expectation is reasonable. Listen, we are hurt when we have an expectation and it's not fulfilled. So if the expectation is unreasonable in the first place, we're really contributing to our own emotional hurt, okay? Survival key number 4, stop engaging. Develop these coping skills. Because the come here, go away, I love you, I hate you, push and pull, that is a standard underpinning of a relationship with any narcissist, is emotionally exhausting and depleting and demeaning, okay? Survival key number 5, document it and stick to the facts. Okay? Document it. Don't treat it like it's a journal where you're exploring your feelings and how hurt you are and why don't they understand and why don't they care and maybe it's you. Stick to the facts. Stick to the facts. They came in the door, they slammed the door. Okay? They threw a plate across the room because they said dinner was late. I picked up the broken pieces of glass. They stormed out of the house angry at 7 p.m. They returned at such and such a time. You want to be able to look back at what you've captured and be certain about what happened. Okay, so stick to the facts. What are the actual words? What are the actual actions? What was the actual behavior that took place in that incident? Okay, so in summary, we've been talking about 5 keys to surviving a narcissist. We have defined and discussed what a narcissist is. We have defined and discussed what gaslighting is, which is their weapon of choice, and all the many different ways that gaslighting can be employed in a relationship. And we have talked about cognitive dissonance, which is typically the outcome of being involved in a relationship with a narcissist. And so it speaks to the internal turmoil and conflict and emotional distress that victims or targets experience when they are engaged in a relationship with a narcissist. And then we also talked about the 5 keys. And these are 5 things that I've employed in my own life that have worked for me to help to stabilize me and help me to understand, to discern what was real from what wasn't real. And so these are things that prayerfully will help you to navigate your own set of circumstances um, more efficiently. More efficiently. We want you to know that we are pulling for you. We want you to know that there is life on the other side of abuse. You just have to utilize wisdom in terms of navigating it and in terms of exiting safely and maintaining your safety and security once you have exited. Don't forget to check down in the description box for other activities, other things that we are involved in. We have recently launched a clothing and accessories line called Judah's Roar Streetwear. The link information is in the description box. All right. And so we are pulling for you. We're pulling for you. We upload a video every week. They premiere on Sundays at 3 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Mountain time, 5 p.m. Central time, and 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Feel free to visit this channel at any time. Share our videos on all of your social media platforms and help us to raise awareness and put an end to domestic violence. Every video that's shared, every post that is shared has the possibility of strengthening and empowering someone who is ensnared in domestic violence, right? And maybe even saving a life. This is Apostle Cheryl Richardson with Judah's Roar Domestic Violence Awareness Initiative. Thank you for spending time with us on today. Blessings to you.